All right, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Sumner County Special Call Meeting to focus on our school budget. Before we begin, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by a pledge to our flag. Feel free to join us if you like. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call to order tonight's special call meeting of the Sumner County School Board. First item on the agenda is public comments. We have two individuals wishing to speak tonight. The first is Holly Cruz. If you please come to the microphone, share your name and your address. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Holly Cruz. My address is 3275 Hartsville Pike in Castellan Springs. Thank you so much for allowing me to come speak this evening, as always. And thank you for the work that you all do. I appreciate it. I unfortunately was not able to be here at last week's meeting, and I thought I would put something together nice and pretty, and that sort of has gone out the window the longer that I have sat and thought about the budget and what it looks like currently, what my idea is of the way the school board manages our budget discussions. And I say, like, number one, thank you so much for setting this meeting aside, because I do think that is important to dedicate a full meeting to just discussing the budget, because I am anxious to hear what thoughts you all have, what discussions are going to happen, and really respect the hard work that Amanda Brown's team has put into it. As a 2-working household family and managing a very small budget in comparison to the very large budget that you all manage, right? There really is no comparison. There's a lot more that goes into that versus what I do at home, but it's work. It's a lot of work, and it is yearly planning, right? It is yearly discussions, and I know that that is happening day in and day out with Ms. Brown. I would like to see that continue to you all. I would like for that transparency to continue all year long, and I know that some of you have spoken about that, and I appreciate those thoughts, because I think there is not nefarious things happening with the budget. But it is a lot to get through, and I think the more we talk about it, the more we educate our community on it, the better it becomes. I think it's very hard as a parent and an outsider to watch, and see where that money comes from, right? We've got county funding, we've got state funding, we've got federal funding. And I think the frustration currently lies for me with county funding, state funding, federal. Well, we don't maybe necessarily have much of an impact there, but you all do at the county level, you all do at the state level. You are the advocates, you are elected to represent us and to be our voice to our legislators and say, hey, this is what we need to fully fund our schools. So my frustration lies currently there, because that work and those conversations should be happening all year long. Discussions are done at the state level. It's too late, right, to ask for money now at this point. It's too late. So what work has been done? Can you share if you've engaged in conversations? Or have you sat and watched them pass their voucher bills? And you've sat back and not said, hey, Sumner County needs some funding. We have got playgrounds. We have got children that can't access their playgrounds for recess. I was going to come with a budget for some theater funding and advocate for that. I had a school member say, share it with me, and I said, you know what? No. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I have the information. I'll share it, sure, after the fact. It's not my job. That's the work that you all are elected to do. And I mean that with the most respect possible. But it's difficult to sit and watch maybe that conversation not happening, that research not done, until it's too late. And maybe it is a lack again of transparency. Maybe it is frustration to see legislators paraded into an end of year celebration of our school staff when we can't afford to pay people and our teachers and our school staff wages that they are so deserving of, because they are, if we don't have staff, highly qualified staff that need to be paid well, and I'm talking from the top down, what are we doing? What are you all doing? What are you doing all year long? I want to see that. Many of us want to see that, and I know, man, not a lot of people come. Not a lot of people are going to be here saying, yes, this is what we need. We'll see it on social media after the fact, right? You will. You'll see and hear it. But for those of us that have been following along for 4 years, it's disappointing. It's disappointing, and I hope you can work to do better. Thank you.
All right, Jackson Goddard.
All right. You know America's turning 250 You know America's turning 250 years, right? Yeah. And who's ready for UFC Freedom 250 at the White House? Who's ready to watch it? And who wants Ilia Topuria or Justin Gaethje to win? All right. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, here we go. My name is Jackson Goddard, and I will be a senior at Beach High School because of great teachers and staff. I am also the mascot. I have autism and have been in special education on my whole school career. I used to hear my mom talk to people about inclusion and sometimes get upset about it. I didn't understand what any of that meant, but I do now. No child should ever feel excluded because they learn differently, communicate differently, or because they have physical challenges. And no adult should ever let that happen. I'm grateful for the teachers and staff who work hard every day to help students like us succeed, and for the work being done to improve the playgrounds in Sumner County. I have many friends in school. I remember my great friend Rachel from California, who is in a wheelchair because her body needed help. She never had a playground to play on and had Miss Julie push her around on the track or go to the occupational therapy room alone because there was no equipment she could use. That always made me sad. Every child deserves great, safe school facilities to play. I cannot imagine telling children with disabilities that they can't play with their friends because the grown-up didn't think it was important enough. Playing together, being included, and making friends are the best things about being a kid. Growing up with a physical or developmental challenges are difficult. I know this from experience and have seen too many of my friends hurt and left out. As school board members, you have to do the right thing by funding the ADA playgrounds. If you can't support this, I will respectfully ask you to explain why children with disabilities should have fewer opportunities than everyone else. Please vote to give all kids a safe, inclusive, accessible playground. Thank you for your consideration in this matter.
right, that concludes public comments this evening. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda, discussion or action regarding the general purpose budget for school year 26-27. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Got a motion, Ms. Hayes, second? Second, Mr. Lacy. All right, discussion. Saw a lot of discussion online, so, or emails with lots of questions, so. All right, Mr. King.
Sure, I'll go first. So I had emailed about two things. One was sub pay, and another was bus duty, and just wanted to know if there was any possibility of those two items being addressed in this budget. And so the substitute pay issue was, I had a question. I sent an email. What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was agreeing with you that you said it. Sorry. I didn't-
Yeah. So it just, I've had a few retired teachers say, "Hey, we want to substitute teach in Sumner County." We've had we're veteran teachers, and the substitute pay. If you're retired from Sumner County, you get $150. If not, you get $115 a day. That's a day per day rate. You get $115 a day, and they feel like, I'm getting paid. I've had 35-year career. I'm getting paid the same as someone just out of college, and so they feel that that doesn't express the value of their experience. And so I inquired, could we make it across the board for retired teachers the same, $150 a day for all retired veteran teachers? So is that a possibility? That's my question.
Yeah, I think so, Mr. King. I think basically 2 years ago, 2 years ago, when we did the big compensation study that Mr. Ott presented in that January. That initial suggestion to up that pay rate came out of that, and the compensation committee recommended that 150 versus 115 for retired Sumner County teachers. I think, my recommendation is to try to get a picture of what that implication would look like if we expanded it. So I think that would be something I would recommend that we kick, because they do that compensation committee each year and meet, and I think that would be certainly something that they could look at. That should be something, we probably wouldn't have to wait until January, February. I think that could be something they could look at pretty quickly and then come back to us so we could look at it, but then we could see what's the implication, because if we're talking about 3 or 4 people that meet that criteria, that's a different thing than if it's 100, just in terms of the financial implication on subs. So that would be my recommendation, is that we certainly ask the compensation committee to look at that and see. I presume they had a reason for focusing in on Sumner County retired teachers versus all retired teachers, but I don't necessarily think there would be any kind of objection to having retired teachers make more, but just where we can get a picture of what that implication would be financially.
If you don't mind me asking, just jumping in real quick, as far as substitute numbers, how are we doing with substitutes as far as being able to fill those positions when we have teachers out?
Yeah, I get a report each day from Mr. Ott's team, and there are certainly, like you get in the spring where you get close to Christmas, and there are Fridays where the fill rate is lower, and that's a combination of more people out. It's flu season, Christmas village season, some other things going on, but then it's also a time when a lot of our subs also have stuff going on too. Those are really the only times that we're seeing a substantial difficulty filling positions. It's been much better. Always though, I think one of the things that we're deeply committed to, which I think would warrant studying, expanding it to all teachers, is the fact that, we want, anytime we can put a certified teacher in a classroom to sub, that's the best possible scenario. So I definitely, and I think there's other questions like, we had used during COVID, we used a lot of our own teachers to fill positions. Because obviously the best thing we could do is have a teacher that's currently teaching in the school cover, but then you have to kind of balance them having planning time, the fatigue level, burnout level of our teachers and things like that, where during COVID, it was pretty much just something that we covered internally all the time. That has diminished some, but I think probably, Mr. Daniels, to tie the two together, it might be a good thing for us to look at, get conversation to look at, let's pull all the numbers together and look at our sub fill rates, what that looks like, retired teacher, retired Sumner County teacher, retired teacher, bachelor's degree, different things like that, so we can just get a clearer picture. I think it's a great question. I just think it warrants a little bit of study before we can come back with an answer. I don't think anybody's, I mean, we always want to put the very best in front of our kids, to fill an absent slot.
Okay, and thank you for that. And then the other question I had was regarding bus duty, and increasing the pay for that, and also, do schools have a certain allocated number of positions for bus duty? Is that right, or is it just anybody that wants to do it can do it?
So I would say yes to everything you've just said, and then a couple more yeses to stuff that you didn't ask. So talking to Ms. Brown and Mr. Ott, we've had a lot of conversations this spring. Mr. Lancaster sent an email about a month ago asking some of the same type things. So, I don't want to sound like I'm just kicking these things to committee for study, but I do think this is going to warrant quite a much more extensive study than subpay would, because what we have is we have some schools, for instance, like if I take Rucker Stewart and Gallatin High School have the longest bus duty periods in the county because they have the largest number of bus riders, and they have a mix of long rural routes and enclosed routes. And sometimes because the density of the population, they're running 2 or 3 routes instead of 1, like in some of our more remote places. So that leads to a longer bus duty time, more people, things like that. We absolutely need that there. So that's one level where we have some schools where the buses are in and out in less than under 20 or 30 minutes. So it's a little bit different based on different schools, and some of that, like, it's not really like there's not really a type. It's just based because you could have some of the same things that, like, I have no idea what the bus time on like a North Sumner would be, but that's another one where you're gonna have some lengthy rural routes. So part of it will be to work with transportation to look to see are there efficiencies we can gain with the way we're doing routes. There's also a mix of classified and certified employees, and that's where that's kind of evolved over time. Some schools have always run it with classified staff, teaching assistants and things like that. Other schools have run it with certified staff. Now, the one thing I think all of us agree on is $7.50 an hour is way too low. We need to find a way to boost that. But we have to weigh in that if it's a classified person, we have to take into account how much time they have and does that push them into overtime? Because there's a whole lot of different things about that. Certified, we don't have the overtime problem, but then that's where I think we might can pick up some efficiencies with the way we run our routes. So this is a long answer to a short question, Mr. King. I think the thing is going to be it's going to require Mr. Ott and his team, Ms. Brown, her team, to do a lot of on-site visits to go through almost school by school or cluster by cluster to figure out what's the right mix of, hey, let's look at our bus routes. Let's also look at our staffing ratios so that we've got something consistent across the board. Because it's hard if we just say if we go to this, because that'll affect people differently based on where they are. But I think we could set a goal of we want the pay to be substantially higher than $7.50 an hour, so it's more amenable to people to do it, while at the same time sifting through all the different pieces of that. So it is going to require us untangling some things that we've always done, because like I can tell you there are people at certain schools where I was an administrator at that are still doing bus duty that were doing bus duty in 2011, and there's other people where it changes every time. So how do we find the sweet spot of changing it where it's better for everybody but not negatively impacting somebody to get something that's overall? If we just doubled the pay, I believe, Ms. Brown, the impact would be about $500,000 or $600,000 immediately if we just went from $7.50 to $15. So it would carry a substantial, in addition to things like overtime pay and different things like that. So it absolutely is something that needs to be on our radar to study, because we've got to just untie the knot on this and get to the bottom of it. I think that should be one of our top priorities. And I think this is another thing, as we've talked over the last month or two about things we can work on budget related throughout the year instead of waiting to the end. I think subpay, I think this is another thing that we can work on and try to get at quicker. That one will take longer.
One thing I want to add, just while you're talking about the bus duty piece, I'd like to see if when we present that, to kind of go over what the expectations are for those that are running the bus duty, because I know there are times where that gets a little bit lax. Kids walking down sidewalks and cutting across the road to jump in a car. instead of waiting in line, kids running down the sidewalks and around the curve to jump in. And so I'd like to see some kind of discussion over, if we're looking at this, also what that would entail, because there's also a safety element there.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, like including our safety team, but also our principals in that conversation, to figure out what are the problems that our principals are seeing, where are their pain points, and then how do we address that with bus routes, but also the entire complex of safety for car riders and walkers and everything else.
Yeah, so this issue came out of a conversation I was having with a principal about bullying, and I asked, what are some things that the board could do? We don't want to get into the day-to-day and all that, and this was one of the issues. One of the things he said, we could probably up the bus duty pay and maybe increase how many slots we have for it, just to lay some more eyes on students, and that's kind of how it started. And then then kind of snowballed into discussing it even more in depth. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
We've kicked this around a lot. I think it's just time for us to, and we've tried to get at it, but it's, when we're trying to do this, while we're also building the budget, there's so many moving parts, because it is something where we need to get principals, safe schools, HR, finance, everybody, looking at it together. It's to get a more comprehensive solution. It's way more complicated than you would think in that 30 to 40 minutes before and after school.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, so who is it the same rate across the district? I mean, is it that $750 the Sumner County School bus or duty rate?
Yeah.
Is that regardless of if it's a classified employee or an assistant or a regular teacher? So there's no discrepancy at all? Okay.
No, it's $750 flat for everybody.
Yeah, that was kind of my first question, to understand like the process. So basically what we're saying is we need an evaluation of the process, how many people are impacted, and to a certain level, when was that? I mean, I'm assuming that's been, is it basically, heck, it's minimum wage, so is it?
I would say it's evolved over many decades, but I think that there used to be, because, some of it evolved like, when we had the SCEA was a part of the contract process, there were things put in place about bus duty and things like that, and that's probably where a lot of the rules came from. But I think what we need to look at now is like, for instance, like if you've got Rucker with about an hour before and after school, where they've got kids in buses, and there's probably like, maybe we could cut that down to 45 minutes, but that would warrant a significant larger investment in the number of people because of the amount of time, as opposed to a school that's got 15 minutes. We still want people there, but it might be a different, so that we're not just doing kind of a uniform staffing across the board, because I think that's what we've done historically. And then, like we have some schools where it's all certified staff. We have other schools where it's all classified staff. We have some where it's a mix. We have some where we probably have too many doing it, and others where we don't have enough. So I think it's probably the best thing we could do is just go down to the ground and build back up with the guidance of how do we ensure it's safe, how do we ensure we get the proper amounts of supervision, and then how do we pay in a way that makes it appealing to someone to do bus duty.
And is it currently, the only other question I would have, is it currently like, if I'm at a school, do I I hate to use the word volunteer for a paid job or a paid add-on, but is it a voluntary sign up, or am I, as principal, saying, hey, I need you to do bus duty and we're going to pay you $7.50 an hour?
So I think that a lot, some schools, especially if they're using more certified staff, some of them there's a multitude of different ways. Some schools are doing it where they're staggering arrival times and departure times. So you come 15 minutes earlier, you leave 15 minutes earlier at the end of the day. There are some where it's just, here are the times and they're paying it. And so I don't know that I could say there's like one way that it's done. We've always kind of left this, we've given principals the number of positions that they have. I don't think very many people are being forced to do it. I think generally there's always people that'll sign up to do it. But I do think there are some schools where it's largely covered by certified staff based on like staggering arrival and departure times, and then other schools where, it's just covered by paying them the amount of time that's allocated. Like, for most schools, it's, it's like 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. It's like, you know, basically around an hour a day.
Okay.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My experience in 12 years is that it's looked different at every school.
Mhm.
And that's just within my district, and I've had some questions about, well, hey, you know, our principal wants assigns.
Mhm.
Some people, they sign up for it. And then if a teacher needs to leave, she pays, this is on the record now,
Mhm.
she'll pay the certified to take her slot. So a standardized program across the county
Mhm.
is not feasible because different routes and different times. Longer routes, short routes, not all the busing. Some gets done in 20 minutes, some takes 35, 40. Do principals express this frustration with you?
They generally express that they wish the pay was more.
Yes.
Occasionally they'll call and ask if they can have an extra person, and then we try to look at the ratios and everything and ascribe that. Usually we've given that position. So, you know, I think it's probably, I can remember if you go back decades, I remember when my mom was doing it, you got a week of bus duty as part of being a teacher.
That's what I did.
We haven't done that in a long time. But, you know, it's just a hodgepodge. And, you know, some of it is it's a very different thing running bus duty in a high school
Sure.
than it is running in an elementary school. So I think we can look at it's a good time to say what's the appropriate amount of staffing in elementary school and middle school and high school, and then looking at it, yeah.
I was going to say, as a part of our safety audits this year, we did ask a few questions about this just to sort of begin
Good.
this question because it is so different and it varies based on the building's layout, the bus traffic, the bus rider, car rider traffic, and where people are. And so we have started that conversation. I don't have all those notes back from all 53 buildings yet, but we're trying to get a bit, because we have this conversation has come up many times and it's like,
Right.
but what? Yes, everything, all the things that you're saying happen. And so we're trying to get a picture of it so that we can get a grasp on what is a best practice, what are recommended protocols, what can we recommend for staffing and pay and things like that, because it varies so greatly. So we have started that.
That's perfect timing in the direction that we're going to go. As Mr. King has brought this up, and I think the job description is very important. This is what's required of you when we bump it to $15 an hour for your bus duty. Would you leave it to the principal? I know this is projecting out, but would you leave it to the principal to either have the flexibility to assign, have teachers and certified, and they can't go over
Yeah,
part-time, can't go over something else?
I think we kind of need to get a survey to look at the land and see, and then let's look at best practices. We can look at what other districts are doing. I do think, like, if we did a job, I think a job description is a good idea. I'd probably have an elementary, a middle, and a high, because I do think it's going to be different. You know, like in middle, for instance, you're watching for a whole lot more bullying type behavior and things like that. Where high school, it's like, if you ever watch teenage drivers leave a high school parking lot, it's by far the most dangerous time of day because they all back up at the same time. None of them look. I'm hopeful that backup cameras make that better because they do beep, but you know, it's very different than you know, like where you see, like, I mean, you know, it was amazing even at the open houses last week. Like Hunter has, if you get there early, you can scan a QR code, put your name in a Google Doc, and then they call those names out first, and they roll those through and, you know, repeat the same thing. Like that's a very high tech way to do bus duty, and they roll it out like clockwork. And then you have some others that do it, you know, with numbers, with parent names in the car. So, you know, the thing is to get the right thing, to not change systems that have worked for a long time in school, but to identify what are some best practices to do this, and then what are the safest ways, you know, what are the most secure ways, where are we hitting all these different areas. But I think what I would prefer to recommend is let's do a little bit of a study, and then we can present that to the board later.
Mr. Evans?
Yes, my thought goes to, I mean, this is great. I think, again, hopefully these conversations happen throughout the year. We have a better plan for it, especially this time next year. This gets my brain kind of thinking, though, like, what are we not talking about, because if we do bus, then what else is out there that we're not looking at? Because then we probably need to be. It goes basically, if you're paying one, the others are going to want something too. And what I want to be careful is we're not looking at or forgetting something else. So what I would ask is whatever committee or whatever you guys are going to be looking at, I would go ahead and look at all of these to have some type of study so that we can look at not just these two, but probably all the other options as well.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we've seen a lot from our safety audits with Ms. Brown is we started with, we've got to secure, first thing was SROs in every building. That's the number one safety protocol we have. And then working out from there, securing, with the vestibule, the hardened entrances, everything like that. So the good news is we're out looking at things now that are out here like bus duty and things like that. But yeah, I just think it's almost like we had a couple years ago, Mr. Johnson started where we looked at all the policies on like a 3-year rotation just to go through and update. It's almost like you do the same thing with your processes and procedures too, because things change, we identify new things, COVID changed a lot of stuff. And so, yeah, I think we can certainly do that. And what I'll do is I'll meet with my team, and then maybe hopefully by June, if not by July, I'll be able to give you kind of like an idea, like let's talk about this in the study session in September or November or January or whatever, when I think we can. I'll have to just get them to look at it and see how long they think it'll take to do the study. The bus duty one will take a while because it's pretty extensive.
I do want to mention, just while we wait for other people to chime in, you mentioned the hardened entrance to schools. I know it's not part of this year's budget, but it's my understanding, or I believe, thinking back to when we started that process, that was part of the capital improvements under Dr. Phillips. The first round, I think, when we went into the bond, was part of the large-scale capital projects plan that the architects helped put together that included the additions in other schools as well. So, as we continue to look towards the capital projects, I know we'll have that discussion over the next couple months, with the playgrounds, with renovations to schools, with HVAC and all the other things that are on our list. Turf at Municipal Park for Gallatin High School's baseball program may be a place for them to, change their clothes outside of a parking lot. But those things are all things that we'll be able to really dig into and look at and make sure are included in future budgets. We work with this, with the next commission too. So, Ms. Brittany?
I wanted to just kind of share for transparency as requested what some of these conversations look like that maybe don't typically get seen. Budgeting is an ongoing conversation with our board, with our staff. A lot of conversations have been happening leading up to this big giant budget being published. And hopefully by the time we get to May, much of that is reflected here. And I know the conversations I've had offline with the different staff members, a lot of that is represented here. And the things that aren't are things that are either on my bucket list for next year or the year later, or things that we couldn't accomplish this year, but we may try a different way. What you see as a public is 2 meetings a month. That is the tip of the iceberg of the work that we do. Now, we can't work together, but we can work with our staff, we can work with our community. You see at most, 4 to 7 hours a month, and I would tell you most of us are putting in 25 on a good month. So it's just the tip of the iceberg that you see. But the budget does reflect where our priorities are, and when you look at where our priorities are, it's with our people. The biggest portion of this budget by far is with our people. And so having more conversations around how we continue to move our people in the right direction, continuing to talk about how we raise our salaries and benefits, those are going to be part of that. But for me, the only thing that should be happening in this conversation is confirmation of what we've been working for throughout the year. And there may be small changes, there may be small things that we do differently, but this should be the culmination, and it is the culmination of a lot of work that happens in the day-to-day.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that for next year that I see is we start usually getting TISA estimates in January, but the thing is, like, we don't really know what our state revenue could potentially look like until until around the end, like, I always advocate for more money. Like, that's how I start every conversation with our legislative delegation is, we need more money. And then we need more money and more money. And you know, I will continue to do that. I do think that one of the things we're gonna need to do is kind of try to do some forecasting and share, like, if we're gonna go up in our pay, this is what it costs and this is what the revenue looks like. Like, you know, because I think one of the things is, as you saw on the slide deck from 2 weeks ago, is if we do step raises each year, that's close to about $4 million that we need to increase revenue each year just to do a step increase. So if we're gonna add beyond that, then you're talking an additional $4 or $5 million for each, you know, each level that you're going up that. Like, I believe just for certified, if we went up $1,000, it's about $4.5 million in additional revenue that we need to have. So I do think that we can lay out earlier what that means so that we can communicate that at the county level and at the state level to advocate for what we need for our folks. And I think that they will be very amenable to that, because I would like to point out that we always, while I will say we always want more money, we've also received a lot more money from the state and local, and I want to be appreciative of that while we push for more. Because we're up around $100 million more from the state and significantly more from the county, and we've continued to see that. I mean, you know, the thing is, though, is that when you account for inflation, you'll see that about an $11 million increase in revenue is about 3%. So for us to do substantively more things, we'll have to have more than 3% increase in revenue year over year.
And just real quick, just while you were commenting, you mentioned that, you know, to do a one-step increase, it's approximately $4 million. Can you just kind of share with the group again what percentage of our budget is designated for salaries and benefits?
I think it's around 86%.
Around 86%. And then what's the average cost to run our school system for one day?
Used to be about 1.8 million. It's probably closer to 1.9 now.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Evans.
Yeah, the only two things I had, just from things I've asked, but also feedback I got. As we look at how we're going to use some of these funds and allocation proposals, probably one thing that's probably, and I just, again, I see this because of the industry I work in, but I do think we need to be strategic about, I mean, if gas continues to go where it's going and stuff, I mean, we're going to have a legitimate issue with sales tax, just from what we get next year. So I don't say that to be, but we have to be a little proactive here and think that that's a real reality, looking forward. Secondly, I know I brought up about allocating some funds for sound equipment and for entertainment, but from talking to some principals, I got some feedback, and I want to make sure this is clear from a public's perspective. So each principal in school is given X amount of money to use for not their whatever they want to, but if they see the need to replace a speaker or a microphone, there are funds currently at each school they have the ability to spend, correct?
Yeah, I think for most schools that's absolutely true. We could look at individual schools to make sure, but I would say probably 90-95% of that. I think, like, I've thought about, since your suggestion last time, I've thought a lot about it. I think some of it is the technical expertise to know what to buy.
That's kind of what, yeah.
And I think that's where we could provide some guidance.
Yeah. My ask would be that I'm not going to ask to allocate the funds tonight, because from what I understand from information gathered and talking to principals, the money is there already. I think that we could do a good job of, when I say advocacy, something that I would like to see done is that we do educate these staff so they know how to use that money for these things.
And we've tried to do that some, like what you could purchase with your instructional funds on, like, packets of stuff that you could do, not packets, but like items you could purchase instructionally that would be approved. And I think we could do that for, like, if we have like a base package for sound. I think, you know, of course it would be a little bit different based on what kind of space you're talking, but I think it's really more of the technical guidance than it is the actual cost.
Yeah, I think that, again, not only do we live, it's not just Music City. I mean, there's all these companies that could be able to send stuff, but I do think that there's finding expertise in the Nashville area to come in and help set it up and make sure it's done right and taught right. I mean, I'll use a great example is I was at Beach Elementary last Wednesday for the open house, and they tried to do a presentation and, like, you couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but a 1,000-watt speaker that costs $500, you could put one in that room and it would fill the space. And that's not anybody's fault, but I just think that's something we could do just a little bit better to make sure it works. So.
Some people were serving snow cones really loudly. That's what disrupted it.
Well, and to Mr. Evans' point, I think the other thing is that we've got to look at the schools, because, you know, Gallatin High School is a whole lot older than Liberty Creek. It's probably got more up-to-date sound equipment that was built into the design.
Right.
And then you're talking about middle schools, you know, when we did Matilda Junior at Schaefer, just, you know, being in a gym and trying to pump volume out into an audience in a gym floor setting, you know, from a stage that's recessed is a little bit different than, you know, a cafeteria. And so we've got to look at all of those different situations. But, you know, in my mind, if we could find a way, you know, for middle schools and high schools in particular, and not to discount the elementary schools, but with more middle schools and more high schools moving towards theater programs and musical type programs, you know, you're looking at a cost of $5,000 to $6,000 a year minimum for licensing fees if you're having to rent speakers and equipment and lights and all the other stuff. You know, so, you know, if we could find a way to push, you know, $10,000 towards each of those schools to help with some of that on a more annual basis. I know, again, we've got the instructional money that can somewhat go to that, but, you know, making sure that our principals know, hey, let's look at maybe allocating some of those dollars towards that. And that's not to discount our band and our art programs that also need, you know, funding too.
Well, I think some of it is just working with our principals, because we're pushing out the same instructional money that we were pushing out 5-10 years ago, but we've taken the cost of technology and curriculum and things like that. So it's just really working through. There are some schools where we probably need to look at how can we help them get over the hump, but there's a lot of schools where just with some direction and support, I think we can get there.
Thanks. Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. When you mentioned the representatives, and I wanted to just address Ms. Cruz's comment, I would say that each of us have the cell phone numbers for our local representatives. We're always asking for more in a very diplomatic way. You know, as Paul in the Bible, you thank them for all the good that is being done. However, we could use some more money. And so yes, we do. And that's just an ongoing conversation, especially when they're in session and it's leading up to any education legislation. On the county commission level, we all speak to our own representatives and others to the point of the fuel going up, inflation, the cost here. I want to address with the county commission that they changed us from the percentage we had in property tax and moved us to sales tax, which we're not going to see. I predict we won't see the sales tax revenue that we had. So we are already 10 yards back. I'd like to see us go back to the percentage we were getting on the property taxes. That is a steady income, a steady revenue of money that we need. We're talking about doing these ADA. We want to do them. All it takes is money. And when we've been cut with the property tax amount, and Ms. Brown, you can correct me. I know I spoke to you. I wanted you to educate me on. I was seeing what this had changed, and I remember when they voted, and just projecting what we're gonna get, and why you've always been conservative with our budget. More so now, because it's not when, it's not if, it's when, and it's happening. Our economy. You don't know. So that's a conversation I'd like for us to have with our county commissioners, that they revisit that, that we go back to that steadier amount, knowing with property taxes. But yes, Ms. Cruz, we communicate, not just the district officials, the school board representatives with our state delegation and our local commissioners. But thank you, Ms. Cruz.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, so on the capital side of things, I think that's the biggest concern I've got on the whole thing right now. I mean, I don't like any of it, to be honest. When I say I don't like it,
Right.
I understand it. But, you know, there's not a whole lot I can do with, you know, what we got. That's my question is, I know we always have, you know, potential issue, you know, asking for more money due to a maintenance of effort type, you know, situation, and I get it, whatever. But the capital piece kind of kicks us out of that. Has there, and I know you've had some initial conversations about that. You know, is it something that we need to actually just put on a piece of paper and say, hey, can we get, you know, 5 million, whatever, and say, guys, you know, we're not trying to rob you. We understand y'all got your own issues to work out with your budget, but this is just the truth of the matter. If we need to come to you all for, I mean, $5 million for capital that what we have in our budget. I mean, you have one good storm and blow through that pretty quick. So if we had something that, you know, my understanding is that if they allocated us capital, they would then control, like we'd have to come and say, hey, we need this. You know, that's my question. Has that conversation started? Is there anything we can do to push it? I don't want to throw it necessarily. I don't know what number to even throw, because I don't want to ask for you know,
Right.
$2 if they give me $4, but I also don't want to, you know.
Yeah, Mr. Agish, I've kicked that around a lot. I don't have like I would tell you if I had a dollar amount, I'd have a proposal for you. I do think like, you know, like I think if I go back to when we asked for the 5.8 million additional for stadiums, we had like a very concrete thing we were asking for. We could do it in a way where it didn't go into maintenance of effort. Actually, they pretty much just gave us that money. It came from the county. And we've done historically, we used to always have a capital allocation on the county side. It was just in their budget, and we would buy school buses and sometimes textbooks and things like that out of it. We went away from that the last, you know, like I can't remember exactly what year we shifted away from that. I know 2022, but I think even a little bit before that, it moved it over, you know, when we were building schools and things like that, just moved it all over to the school allocation. I just like, you know, I do think that when we're asking them for additional dollars in capital, it helps if we kind of have a plan to share, like this is what we're looking to do with the money. And so I think what my recommendation is, like there are some things I can tell you right now that would be helpful. Like we left special education school buses in our budget because it's better for us to buy those because we get money back from the state if we buy those out of our capital. So that, you know, we get it both ways. Like we get the buses faster, but then we also get a percentage of that back through a thing that the state has. But I think that, you know, so there are some school buses we could buy. There's some continued safety things that historically our county commissions, regardless of who it was over the decades, have wanted to support. School buses being one. I think safety, you know, Mr. Daniels mentioned earlier, like hardened entrances and things like that. Like I think that actually even started before that first round of bonds. I think we started that a couple of years before. So that would span 3 different groups of commissioners. I think like, you know, we're starting to get a pretty good picture on what special education playgrounds or accessible playgrounds are going to cost. I think we can work with Ms. Daniel to get like an up-to-date as enrollment takes place over the summer. We can get a really good picture of where, because sometimes those things change based on, you know, new students coming in, students changing schools, things like that. And then we can ask the committee to do a run like, what would the next 3 to 5 playgrounds we could do look like? And then we could get an estimate based on what we're seeing from the 2 plus, you know, the 2 that we voted on, plus adding on for George Whitten over the summer. That way we'll have 3. Then we're starting to pick up some steam and mass, but we know exactly what it costs, so we can see like, if we want to go beyond this, then we're probably talking about putting some of this into a bond. But if we're content to grab 2 or 3 a year, that's probably something we can keep doing, working through the school board and the commission. I think we'll have to stop looking at what's the school board funding, what's the county commission, and look at it, which I think is a really positive thing of looking like where are areas we can work together. I think there are other areas we can also start to look at, but I think we'll be in a good place with special education or with our accessible playgrounds. I would say, like, you know, one of the recommendations I would make is, now that we're through basically with budget, we sit down, we interview, we bring all final recommendation for architect or finalists for architect, we make that decision, and then we work on a master plan, say 5 years for capital projects. Most other districts do this already. Y'all have asked for this a number of times. I think we do that, and then Mr. Lancaster, I think we can put together, we get a little bit feel of where the commission wants to go with that. Understanding there'll be a transition in September, and then we can put together exactly. I just think it would be, I don't know how amenable it would be to go over, for me to go over and say we'd like an additional $5 million in capital because our budget's tight, versus saying, you know, here's some things that we've traditionally funded through the county commission, school buses and things like that. Here's some accessible playgrounds, the next run of those, plus, you know, some paving projects, some roofing projects, some things like that. And then we can treat that, especially that $2.5 million that we have designated for construction and capital, things like that in our budget, for storms and emergencies and things like that that we have to do at the spur of the moment.
Well, and I think to Dr. Langford's point, when you look back historically how we work with the county commission on large projects, you know, you've got really 2 streams of revenue. You've got the bond, and then you've got the capital allocations. And so, you know, I think when we did the first run of schools, it was about $100 million. Was that for Liberty Creek? Is what we had budgeted, about $100 million?
It was $114 million for the elementary, high school, and the entire campus.
And it came in right around 114, a little less, I think. And then the other run of the 2 schools was around 70, and we came in right around that point too. So, you know, I think when you look at the bond versus capital allocations, if we spend time, you know, putting together the list of the projects that we need. So the projects, building a new campus for Gallatin High School is going to be a $100 million plus project. If you look at the cost of high schools right now, you know, based on what, you know, I've seen from Wilson County and Liberty Creek. And then you've also got the, you know, the renovations at Merrill High, the HVAC replacement. So I think we can work with the commission to figure out, based on the list and a prioritization, do we need to drop this on a bond? Are there some things that we can pull from capital based on their funding? Are there projects that they're working on that they need to have some revenue available for? But I think the first step is getting the architectural firm, getting them in here, getting our list together, getting a pretty good read on the actual dollar amounts requested for each of these projects, and then looking at prioritization with the commission to figure out which ones do we do first. I think we all agree that the Merrill High's near the top of the list with the renovation, along with HVAC, you know, in Gallatin High School, a new campus, but that also requires land, so you're 3 to 5 years down the road at least. But there's some other things that we can do in the interim, the paving project. So to your point, Mr. Lancaster, right now, it'd be great to be able to go over and say, hey, will you give us an extra 5? But it'd be better to say, hey, this is what we plan to do with that money and that allocation right now, and this is how we've got it budgeted, and this is how much we know it's going to cost to put this playground at this school and this campus, and this playground at this school, and the HVAC at this campus. And I think we owe the public that.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to say too, I'd like to give Mr. Sullivan, Chair of Education, Mr. Shove, Chair of Budget, Mr. Hyde, and Mr. Becker as chairs of the commission. They've been great to work with to try to help us get over the humps that we found over the last few years, and I see that continuing. But Mr. Franklin, I don't know if that answered your question. Or...
Well, I mean, it does and it doesn't. It does in fact. I think there's 2 different things we're talking about here. One is a mid, you know, more than next year down the road.
Right.
Because anything, you know, bond stuff like that may be at least several months down the road. I'm also concerned in the next 12 months.
Right.
And knowing, hey, they're about to vote on a budget next month. And I understand, hey, if we throw a number, whatever, that might not be the best way. But there's also things that we probably could at least say, hey, we don't have any school buses in this budget.
Yeah. And,
Can we get, however many?
and I would be happy, like, I can put a preliminary list of stuff together for the June
I can
16th board meeting.
quickly show you a parking lot that needs paved.
It's on there. It's on there. I got you. But no, but I can absolutely, for the June board meeting, I can put some things that I think we absolutely need to get done in the next year while we develop the architect plan. Because I would think the architect plan would highlight some immediate, like say 6 to 12 months, 6 to 18 month things in addition to 5 years. Not everything for bond or longer term capital purchases, but I hear what you're saying too. There's some paving projects. I think we're in a pretty good place right now, not, barring big storms and things like that. We're in a much better place with roofing. We're in a better place, with a lot of our things because we have, I was going through all of our capital projects, and that first year we spent almost $15 million on non-athletic capital projects, and that really caught us up on a lot of things that we've kind of lagged behind on. But there's going to always, with 6 million square feet of heated and cooled spaces and parking lots and things like that, we're always kind of operating from behind on that. But yeah, I can get together a list of those projects and then we can add to it and send that to the commission. I don't think we can do that tonight because of the way we noticed the meeting.
No, that's fine, but what I'm saying is we do
Yeah.
have, their vote is not till,
Into June.
like, I think our next meeting will be before that meeting.
It will be.
correct? So if nothing else, I mean, I'm willing to put one, throw, if you never, you don't get, there's only two possible things that could happen. One, yay, and two, nay.
Abstain.
And hell, I'm good with nay, but I'm really,
Yeah.
I'm not good with, well, we didn't try,
Right.
And so I think if we at least put something together and say, hey guys,
Well,
and we also, I'm happy to, like, hey guys, this ain't like, we're not asking for,
right.
a Ferrari. We're not asking for
Right, for
anything
asphalt.
flashy. We're asking for, basics.
And I think the will is there to support that. I like, when I'm going over things like that, I like for us to put actual.
Yeah, and I'm not totally not against that either. That's kind of the whole thing. It's like we've got a little bit of runway left, and that's one also thing that I think would benefit us all if we, and I know, again, I'm going to preach this again. We just get a little bit more heads up on some of this stuff, so that we can. And I know it's all kind of reasons this year we're difficult, but having an idea of a capital plan in January, February next year would give us an idea of like, hey, we're going to be able to do this. We're going to take, these 5 items and we're going to incorporate them into our budget. You guys got 2 or 3 months. Can y'all, y'all figure out which ones y'all want to do or could do or could help us with and go from there.
Well, hopefully by that point, we'll have a finance director on the county side. But a little bit clearer, it'll be a cleaner year for us in terms of our funding and stuff like that. We can absolutely do that.
The other question I'm going to ask is regarding playgrounds. What is I know we always are talking about grants. What is the feasibility, like, of at least getting one more? Because the goal for me is we at least keep the ball rolling. And we are keeping the ball rolling because we have one in process. But what is the feasibility of, finding a grant or something that would cover another one throughout the year that's not here yet, I guess?
So there's a little bit of a learning curve. Like, we couldn't even apply for the grants until we had the master plan. Now that we have the master plan, we can apply. I think we can also kick it out there. Like, I think what would probably be wise for us is let's pick as a board, and this is something we can talk about in June also, let's pick what's our goal going to be for next year. Instead of waiting until January, February to put it in a thing, like, let's just decide we want to try to do 3 this coming year or something, whatever number y'all want to set. And then we can identify what those are, and then we can kick it out there to look for corporate sponsors to write grants. I know that Ms. Norfleet and Ms. Herring have been working on that because having that committee and then having the master plan were the two precursors to being able to even apply and be considered for the grant. You know, there is some lead time, but I can actually ask for the June meeting, I can ask Ms. Norfleet I can't tell you right now what the probabilities of getting that are, but I do think between corporate giving and grants, there's a distinct possibility of getting some of that covered, if not all, at least a chunk of it. And then that, you know, and if we get one covered, then maybe we come back in January and say, let's go for a fourth one because we've got this money allocated and, you know.
Well, I think that's definitely what I would like to see is like, let's not to rain on our current discussion, but it's all part of this discussion because it's budget is, you know, trying to, you know, figure out which hand or which pocket to pull the dollar out of is what we're doing. And what I would like to see, or what I'd like to do is like, hey, let's identify what our goal is for next year.
Yeah.
And that also could be something that we add to our county as like, hey, if you guys want to pay for
Absolutely.
one, you know,
Yes.
that's something else that we could with throw there. You know, I think this is. I mean, it's just going to take a different approach than what we've had the last few years, and that's not from the county commission side or our side, either one. It's just
Fiscal reality.
fiscal reality is different. I think we all have to realize that, you know, we got to work together to a certain extent, and that includes us. That includes, you know, the way we approach our fellow, you know, commissioners or fellow board members. Everything is like, you know,
Yeah, and I
if
actually
we all
think
have the same
Yeah.
goal, then let's figure out how we do it.
And I actually think that there's a pretty big desire to do just that. I think there's a.
So that's what I'd like to see.
Ms. Barnes?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off Mr. Lancaster and Chairman Daniels. So definitely align with the short term for next year, but looking beyond that, and we've talked about these capital projects for a while. When I see us as a board, where I feel like that's where we should spend a majority of our time talking about, that's where our investments, our largest investments go to. Is there a way, I don't know if this is too much time, but I know when I'm running projects in corporate world, I make more progress when we continue to talk about it. Could we dedicate every other study session to talking about strategic capital investments? I don't know if we have the time to, I know sometimes study sessions are for what we're voting on, but I feel like we need to spend more time in these conversations. I think it's a good use of our time, and it helps prepare for the next budget cycle.
Yeah, and I think we could certainly, if they're your meeting, we're happy to plan them, but I think that ideally what we've done in study sessions historically is look at, you know, what I mentioned earlier, rotating through our policies. You know, we've got some that we'll have to look at,
Right.
you know, because new state laws and things like that. So I think an even balance of looking at policy, which is also strategic work, but then also strategic capital, strategic
Yes.
investments. Like, for instance, I think the conversation about sub-pay and bus duty and things like that is also a topic. But yes, I think ongoing conversation. And I do think, like, if we engage an architect to put together some master planning, having some time to really unpack that and look at it, get feedback, and then start to put together that plan. Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, because if you even like the playground equipment, you know, just having an idea, 5 years from now, could we have every playground? This is probably very lofty, but could we have, you know, every playground available across every school that needed it? But just having that timeline of trying to understand where these fit, the athletic facilities that need upgrading, that would be helpful to me to kind of have that longer term view.
Yeah, and I think that would help us get at what's the right thing to put into a bond versus continuing to peck off 3 at a time, because, you know, what we can, as we get our feel on, we might find like, hey, it's easier to do 10 at once if we're doing a bunch of other capital projects and
Right.
put that on a bond, because we'll get better pricing. You know, what's costing $400,000 might cost $320,000. And if you run that to
Yes.
scale, then we're getting more bang for our buck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, and I think your point about trying to run some of these together, if you're doing anything at, say, you know, like a Merrill Hyde or an Indian Lake or an Ellis, then you've got to add in some playground accessibility. If you've already got people out there working, it's a great time to do that. I know we talked a lot about Liberty Creek, and, you know, a lot of people look at their, you know, the sports center, you know, that they have right there, and it's enormous and it's phenomenal, but being able to include that in the project when you already have the equipment out there versus trying to replicate that at every campus, there's a significant cost difference between having a crew out there working on a project that's already defined versus trying to find the land and build from scratch and relocating everything to another location. So you've also got to balance that when you're looking at the long-term plans. When are we going to be on a campus? And if we're going to be on that campus, what else can we roll into that project to get the best cost and the best value for what we're spending?
Well, and I think too, as part of that strategic deliberations, as we're taking on these projects, especially as we get more into the interior of a school, we have to stage that out. I can tell you there's nothing more inconvenient than renovations when you're running a school. Like, you know, we went through it for 2 solid years at White House. It was the best thing we ever did. The school looks tremendous and outstanding, but when you're having to ask people to pack up all their stuff multiple times and move, kids and teachers, you know, there's a cost to that you have to kind of stagger out, and having that time is part. I think that like helps us prepare everybody for what that looks like, because you know, I can even remember like there was asbestos in the glue at White House underneath the floor tiles. So we would have like over fall break or spring break, we would knock out a hallway, and you know, they would come in with the space suits and everything like that. Well, like we had one time where the asbestos crew didn't take down a sign that said warning asbestos, and somebody takes a picture of it and it's on Channel 2 News, you know, like where if we prepare for that, like, hey, there's gonna be like in Indian Lake Elementary, we're gonna be doing this and it's gonna take on this, then it helps prepare y'all just for that process of change. You know, it's not really strategic, it's more change management, but that's very much a process of doing these type projects.
Mr. Evans?
I feel like we've now, a lot of this is good discussion, don't get me wrong, but I feel like we've all kind of mentioned the same things like 4 different times in the last 2 meetings regarding like wanting to have these reports and wanting to have this. I think talking about it in here is fine, but like I would love to see it, like send the email with what we want, and I think it'd be better for the staff to consolidate all of these thoughts. I feel like, I mean, we're kind of supposed to be really talking about this specific budget. I know we got to plan and look at things in the future, but I feel like we've just kind of gone back and forth about the same thing that we talked about last week as well. But I don't really see anything like I'd like for us to put that in writing and have actually like a plan. I think it's like, okay, cool, we're gonna have a strategic planning meeting. Well, when's the meeting? Where is it actually in writing? So
Yeah,
my thought would be, I think we just gotta do it. We need to take away from this is just a takeaway, like summary. Like we need to send that to y'all and have your staff consolidate that, and that'd be something we work towards. But I don't know. I feel like we all agree that we need to be looking at things from a future perspective, but there's still a reality that we need to still look at this year's budget and take care of it too. So just an observation.
Mr. King?
Yeah, my concern about the playground issue is, you know, the question I think, I agree with Mr. Lancaster about keeping the ball rolling. My fear is that, you know, if we link this effort to outside funding, that this project is going to end up stalling out. And I do support outside funding. I just don't know. I feel like outside funding needs to be a supplement to our commitment, not a substitute for it. So, you know, right now the county commission has really the biggest footprint in terms of investing in this need. You know, parents have said we need this. The community has said we need this. The school board right now is the weakest link in all of this, and the fact that we're not allocating anything right now for this, to me, and I've heard this from parents, that it doesn't give them any, you know, a real sense of confidence or hope that this is a priority. Not
everybody's saying it is, and that's fine. Can we do something tonight something small, it doesn't have to be big, that will send the right message that we're not just doing lip service, we are truly committed to this as a priority, and so can we double our investment towards this need? Last year we invested $250,000. I think if we double our investment in this need, I think that would go a long way to send the right message. And we could, and that would give us an extra playground, because we did 2, we got Witten now, and then this would bring us 1 more. Because on average, when we looked at the cost, it was $250 to $300 on average. So I feel like the parents, the citizens, the community wants us to keep the ball rolling and not risk stalling this out, because bonds, grants are so unpredictable, uncertain, and I just don't want to feel. To me, I feel like I don't want to make the special needs kids wait indefinitely on whether or not a bond gets approved or a grant gets awarded. I would like to see us do something tonight that will send that message, that will increase our footprint in this project. And so I'm just going to make a motion to amend the budget to double our investment by an additional $250,000 towards sped playgrounds. And so that's my motion.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second? Got a second. Let me ask a question real quick. You said to double the investment. Do we have $250,000 in the budget right now, or set aside for?
So we have about, Ms. Becker, about a little bit over $2.5 million in what we would typically do things like playgrounds with, or things like that. So you can certainly earmark $500,000 of that. We would have to probably, we would maneuver things around that we thought we would pay with that money. To Mr. Lancaster's point earlier, that would probably shift some things into what we sent to the commission. If you ask me my preference, you can also do this at any point. My preference would be let's look at this at the June meeting in a couple weeks, because I think you can still designate those funds at any time with the majority vote. So, I guess what my recommendation would be is, let's wait until the June meeting where we can we'll put together the suggested recommendations that Mr. Lancaster put down to send for short term to the commission, and we can also say, like, if we do $500,000, this is what it would look like.
So I guess my question is based on the motion. The motion was to double our current investment. Do we have $250,000 designated right now for playgrounds? That's what we did last year.
We have the money set. That's what you just said. When did we not have the money? I'm missing something here. When did we not have money set aside for these projects? Because you just said we have $2.5 million. So we understand.
Give me just a second. To clarify, in this budget presented to us, do we have a line item for $250,000 set aside for the playgrounds?
So we have money set aside for capital projects, just like we did last year. That's for all capital projects. Last year, the school board in the budget meeting designated $250,000 for special ed playgrounds. What I would say
this year we don't have that money designated. It's just part of capital.
Right.
We haven't done it
So
yet.
the reason I'm asking is your motion was to double. I don't think there's not a line item like we had last year.
Well, we didn't have a line item. We allocated that current year. We allocated that current year's capital toward that was $250,000 of that current year.
So I think what your motion would need to be would be to allocate $500,000, because I think your motion was to double. We don't have.
So my motion.
Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
I'm confused. So we designated $250,000 last year, and I'm wanting to designate another $250,000 this year.
So you're just saying.
So you want $250,000, Mr. King?
You want $250,000 designated this year?
Right, because we already did $250 last year.
Okay.
Or I want to.
So you want to allocate another 250,000?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, that's what I was trying to clarify as far as
Yes,
what
yeah.
you were asking for, so that everybody understood the motion. So,
Right.
All right, all right, so the motion is to allocate 250,000
Right.
from the capital projects budget to set aside for the sped playgrounds.
It's a
That-
designated.
Yes,
Yeah.
all right, and Mr.
Yes.
Lacy, are you,
Well, I was gonna ask a question about that money in
Yeah.
the budget, if I can ask
no,
a question.
let me, are you okay with that, Jason?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Mr. King, let me go.
Do I need to reword it somehow? Okay.
No, I think that's what I was trying to do, is make sure.
Okay, just getting the dollar amount instead of saying double helps, I think.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so that was, my motion is to designate $250,000 towards ADA inclusive sped playgrounds.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
so that's the motion. Can I jump over here to Mr. Lacy?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, let me go over here to Mr.
I would
Lacy.
just like to ask Dr. Langford and Mrs. Brown, you know, we budget very conservatively. Could we easily have $250,000 left over that would cover this 250?
I think you would want to wait until we actually knew we had that money, if you wanted to do that allocation. I would recommend, if you want to do this, I would just go ahead and say, out of the capital budget, like we did last year, designate 250,000. I think that's reasonable. We can work around that, so I think that would be fine.
All right, Ms. Brennan?
I think there's been a little confusion because our budget is allocated for special education inclusive playgrounds. I've gotten a lot of emails in the last week that we didn't allocate dollars. We didn't allocate a specific dollar amount of that 2 million, but I think when we say 250,000, we have now put a limit. I don't think we should put a limit on it today. I think we need to do what we've done with the program. We need to have this bucket of money available for capital projects. We need to make sure, like all of us agree, that that is a priority for these playgrounds. And then we need to budget the specific dollar amount when we have a quote and a specific dollar amount for that playground, for that next playground. I fully support saying, I made a change to my amendment last week that we've got Witten on our next priority. We need our final number for Witten, and then we will hopefully vote to approve those dollars for Witten. I fully support saying we want to attempt to also include a second playground in that. I think that's a great plan. We should do that. But if we vote tonight to put $250,000 aside for special education inclusive playgrounds, we've just put guardrails up to limit the number that we're putting towards those projects. Like, let's vote on Witten when the numbers come in. Let's ask the playground committee to give us another school recommendation, and let's vote when that number comes in. But tonight, let's keep the bucket big. Like, let's not limit ourselves.
Keep Ms. Hayes?
Yes, Chairman. Thank you. Mr. King, or directed to you, Andy. But your motive behind, are you fearful that the grants will take too long and you want to safeguard 250? Or, because we've got 2.5 million, and it is the unanimous goal approval that we want to see these ADA playgrounds. So, and last year I understood that there was this lot of money, and we did vote on the 250. But that was really just to ensure that that went directly to the playgrounds. Now we're really all on board as we discuss the capital projects, and ADA is up at the top. So your motive is to ensure. Are you fearful we're not going to do the 250,000?
Well.
Or we're not going to take care of the next
So,
playground?
Mr. Chairman, my question, did she say 2.5, 2 point some million?
You said 2.5 million is in that line,
Oh.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
For special education?
Hang on, I'll get you.
Which-
It's for our total capital projects.
Which these projects, the ADA, the playgrounds fall under that, correct?
Yes.
And Mr.
I'm sorry,
Lacy.
2.25 million.
This doesn't
Okay.
As far as financially with CFO and chairman, Dr. Langford, there's, I kind of got what you thought would be, you requested how we would do this, but financially, this doesn't do anything to us, Amanda, that puts us any.
It would just be, we would have to ask questions about, like, it would just be the same thing we always do with capital projects. The board has to decide where you want, so there's 2.25 million in that bucket,
Gotcha.
or, you know, whatever we would call it, in that budget line. That's probably the best way to say it, not bucket. But there's 2.25 million in that line. We haven't, like, sometimes in the past, we've really allocated what that money was for. As Mr. Lancaster has pointed out, this is kind of a tight year, so we haven't, like, pigeonholed money for specific projects. We've left that in there, but that gives the board the opportunity to allocate that money how you would choose. So, you know, like, we would like to treat that conservatively, but a accessible playground would definitely fall in that parameter. I think it would also give us, as we're talking to the commission, we could, you know, to Ms. Brenning's point, I think it would give us the opportunity to say, but we do what X amount of dollars, what would you do? Because they may say, let's match each other or something like that. That would be, you know, just trying to think through it with y'all. You know, the budget line sitting there is 2.25 million for those type projects.
Let me ask one more
Okay,
question
sure.
real quick. Just from a sped playground committee standpoint, we know we've got the blueprints for 2. We've thrown a 3rd playground into the pot to begin working on that. We know that on average they're running around 300,000, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the size of the playground and the piece of equipment, and obviously the layout of the school based on the numbers that you shared. How long would it take for that? I know you mentioned June, coming back in June with suggestion for maybe a 4th, 5th, or 6th playground, depending on what we're looking at. How long would it take to get with the committee and say, you know, based on current knowledge of the schools and the students in those schools with mobility issues, here are my next recommendations on playgrounds we want to address? Because, you know, I'm not 100% comfortable saying, hey, let's make this the 4th, 5th, and 6th school, because from a mobility standpoint, maybe that's changed a little bit based on the students that are in the school. But I think you guys will know that as we get into the summer and we start planning for next year. And then to Mr. King's point about, you know, waiting on a bond or waiting on a grant, you know, we do have some funding available on capital projects that can be set aside. When we close the books, maybe the numbers come in higher than we think, which may provide more opportunities. But at the same time, we could always go back to the commission and ask, as part of additional funding for capital projects, here's the dollar amounts for these playgrounds that we'd like to address in the near term.
Yeah, and I probably could have been a little clearer. You know, like, I think we always have a commitment to do it. I just am always thinking about if we can get, you know, Mr. Lancaster asked about grants. If we can get grants, if we can get commission, corporate dollars, whatever else, other external funding, then that allows us to use our dollars for other, you know, equally valuable projects within the school system. So to me, it's always a thing of, like, how do we get the most amount of money possible for our students and staff? So I could have been a little clearer. Like, I was thinking, like, if we wanted to do something in Gargantuan, like 10 playgrounds, that's probably like a bond. You know, I think we can seriously look at, because to your question, Mr. Daniels, specifically, some of that would depend, like, on the school. Like, Station Camp Elementary needs to be done in the summer because you get 1,000 kids using that playground every day. So that's a playground that needs to be done in the summer, because the way that playground is built to do the renovations that need to take place, it needs to happen in the summer to maintain the maximum amount of accessibility for all kids. For instance, like Whitten, I don't know this for certain, but Whitten has so much land around it, we've probably got more area to play with, and that's something that we can work on throughout the year. So I think the question for the committee is to weigh out, they kind of had rank ordered based on the number of students with accessibility needs. The initial thing the committee did is like, but another way we could look at it is weight most highly on accessibility needs, but then also weight, like, are there ones that we can work on during the school year versus ones that need to be done in the summer? Now, another thing is, regardless of what we vote tonight, this will have to go to the commission and the budget be passed. So you're really talking none of these dollars, regardless of what we do tonight, for next year's budget can be spent until after our budget is approved and after July 1. So we're really talking about, we've got some time to figure out the specifics. You know, we've got Whitten in the bidding process now. Like, if we can bring some recommendations to look at in June, then we can get the ball rolling because we've got Whitten already rolling, and then we've got already the master plan that we received from the architect to look at what those next projects would be.
Thank you. Mr. King?
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. Last year we designated, 250,000. We didn't wait until June to see what real numbers were going to come in. We all committed to that. We said, this is what we want to do. This is a priority, right? We want to commit this money. And that sent a message. It was, the intent was, we are prioritizing this, and I don't think anybody thought that 250,000 would get the job done, right? It was just simply, we're telling the public we're allocating this, or we're designating this, and this is our intent. We want to, we're committed to this as a priority, and I think we are right now. By not allocating anything tonight, I feel like we are, actions speak louder than words, and that's really my motive right there. I feel like if we put some money towards this, that gives some people some assurance that we are serious to make this a priority, and I think there might be enough there for a fourth playground, and I don't want to. I mean, if we can take action tonight and get a fourth playground, I think that would be great instead of waiting, and to answer the question of bonds or to answer the question of grants, that just seems very uncertain, and I think there's a risk of stalling the project. And so we can always allocate more, but I feel like 250,000 is less than 1/5 of 1% of the budget. I feel like I said, it's a very like Mr. Lacey said, it's a very conservative budget. I don't think we're taking on a huge risk by doing this. I think it would signal to the public that we are wanting to move forward, maybe get a fourth playground in the works. And so I think we can take action tonight, and we don't have to make we don't have to wait on that. So yeah.
Just as a reminder, we're still on the amendment, so Mr. Lancaster.
Oh, yeah. So, two things. One, I understand where you're coming from. I understand where people are concerned, hey, if you don't put $1 to it, whatever. My issue potentially is, I think it would be better if we said, hey, can we just, I'm trying to think of a way to say this. I don't want to say 250 and then that be what this committee sees as like, oh, well, our next highest priority playground was Jack Anderson, for example, and it's going to take 350 to do that one. I would rather just say, hey, here's our budget. We're going to do at least one out of our budget instead of $1 amount. Or what I'm saying is, like, next year we're going to do the Whitten one, which is we've already done, but that can be what we talk about, next month too. We still have time to make changes to our budget, but even when we get, I did it last year with $1 amount because I wanted to make sure we at least had a committee and got it going. I'm more concerned now, like, yes, we want to keep it going, but I want to, like, if we put a dollar amount limited at 250, for example, if you use the same dollar amount now, I just don't want the committee to come back like, well, we got $250,000 to play with instead of what's the next highest priority playground, and if that is $350,000, then and that's my motion when we come to whatever time they present it. Hey, we're spending $350,000 on this. I do get, you know, the desire to, like, the feel that, hey, if we don't put something to this, then it's not there. But at the same time, I do think we could say we're going to do Witten, which we've already got in the works, and we're going to do at least one more. Would that be, I mean, because if you look, there's a dollar amount in a budget, but then at the end of it, you know, there's also like what the plan is. And if the plan is, guys, we're going to at least do 2 next year. We've already got 1 in the works. We're going to at least do 1 more. And next month we come and get a list of the, I would like to see a list of like, what are the next 2 or 3. And we want to say, hey, we're going to take care of that one. And maybe the county can take care of that. And if we get a grant for another one, I don't want to handcuff us with, and handcuff a committee with a dollar amount. It's not that we're not, I get both sides, and I have been on the side of, hey, let's put money to it. But at the same, now I'm more on the side of like, if we put if we say, all right, 250 is the number, 250 is the number, then that is a,
Mr. Evans?
from a psychological standpoint, people are going to think that that's all we got to do it. And if the committee gets, you know, the list comes in and they're like, well, the next most needed one is this one, but we don't have the $250,000, we're going to go ahead and do one that only has whatever is not the next most needed. I want to go in order of need, not necessarily in order of whatever. So if you want to change your, or whatever, you can leave, we can vote on your amendment. I'm fine with that. I would rather say, guys, next, we're going to at least do 1.
Mr. Evans?
So 2 things. Witten is, correct me if I'm wrong, Witten is coming out of the 25-26 budget, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. That is, I don't consider that being one that we're allocating for next year because it's coming out of this year's funding. So let's take that out of, I feel like we're talking, again, it's talking in circles here. Hearing both of those things, then I would like to make an amendment saying that it's a minimum of $250,000. Then you don't have to worry about it being whatever amount. We know what the average is going to be, but looking at those 2, it's going to be somewhere around that. There's going to be obviously a rise in cost in some things too. If you're going to earmark anything, then you should say a minimum of that, not set a certain amount. Then you don't have the issue of you wanting to do, you know, where the committee feels like they have to pick one or the other. So
I would say that's the minimum of 1.
well,
Go,
you say the minimum of the average, which is what it is. So if you're going to, that'd be my only thought. And I think that this, again, the syndicate, like the idea that, I mean, again, I'm not going to speak for everybody up here. I don't know you personally. I don't know how you feel about this personally, but I don't appreciate sitting up here hearing people think that some of us don't care about this. It's super frustrating. Like, I very much care about this. I don't feel like we haven't voted to allocate the money because we don't have a bid in front of us. I think that once I have a bid in front of us, I can have no problem voting for this. I'm just a little frustrated that we're sitting up here acting like we're not doing something. Like, personally, I really care about this, but we still have to legally do all the things we have to do. So, if we're going to put the money, I would like to have the money, yes. But the idea that we're just not doing this it's just false. So, my motion is to amend his amendment that it's a minimum of 250 because then you don't have to worry about it being over that. So, there you go.
So I've got a motion. I don't know, can you allocate?
You can amend it.
Well, no, what I'm asking is, can you allocate a minimum amount? So basically it'd be allocating 250 and then whatever additional. So if it came back at 350, then we'd vote on 350 at some point down the road. Whether we have it allocated or not, we'd have to vote at that time on however much we're spending for the playground project, correct?
I mean, I don't think there's a scenario where one would come back less than 250,000. I think realistically, you would say more just like we want to do at least one additional playground. But I do think, like to Mr. Evans' point, like it's not, we haven't seen one come in under 250,000. So I think you're fine to say we want to spend at least $250,000 on, because I think if one did come in under 250,000, then we would just look at what was next.
So let me ask this, would you guys be willing to amend your motion just to change it to minimum 250? I mean, or do you want that to be
I mean,
it's gonna be the same.
he hasn't had a second on his yet, has he?
Do I have a
So,
second?
I mean,
I'll second it.
I've got a second
Right.
now. I've got a second.
Right. I mean, Mr. Lancaster, I really like his point. If this amendment does not pass, I'll amend my amendment to commit to, I guess it's a resolution, to commit the board to one additional playground out of our budget for next year.
I think
'Cause,
the
I mean,
resolution will be outside of the budget.
What's that?
The resolution will be outside of the budget. This would have to be an amendment
I
to
mean,
the budget tonight.
that's my question, Nicole.
You know,
I didn't mean, was my mic not on?
Yes,
Okay.
it was on.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how would, if we go with Mr. Lancaster's recommendation, how is that relevant to the budget? Like, we're just committing to doing one more, but I don't know how that would be a.
Well, I think the debate we're having seems to be whether we care about playgrounds or not. And trying
So-
to, let me finish, and trying to say by allocating a certain dollar amount, we're showing that we care about doing the playgrounds. And that's what the conversation sounds like. I think, from my standpoint, like we've committed to do 3 playgrounds. I think when we get into June, we're gonna get a list of additional playgrounds, and at that point, we could vote to commit to do additional playgrounds. So I think regardless of whether we pass this amendment or not, whether we say 250 or 350 or a minimum of 250, when the bids come back, if we're committing to do more playgrounds, we're gonna have to vote to allocate dollars to that playground at some point down the road, whether that's in June, July, August, September, October, whenever that is. So, to me, I mean, it might feel good to pass this and say, hey, we're allocating dollars, pat ourselves on the back, but at the end of the day, I'm committed to doing more playgrounds. I'd like to do a 4th, I'd like to do a 5th, I'd like to do 6th. I'd like by the time we get to the budget next year, we're talking about playground, 7, 8, and 9. I don't know if we're gonna have the funding to do that at that point, but I think working with the county commission, whether it's through a capital project request or through grants or whatever it is, I'm not gonna wait on a grant, I'm not gonna wait on a bond to focus on playgrounds. I'd like to see us get to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10. I think there's 13, 14, 15 schools right now that have students with mobility issues. And even, I know you had mentioned 5 years. I'd like to see us get there even quicker than that. To Dr. Langford's point, if we're gonna do 10, that's probably is a bond issue. If he comes back in June and says, hey, based on size, space, equipment, I think we can knock these next 3 out for $1 million, and maybe we go back to the commission at that point and say, hey, would you be willing to fund an extra $1 million in capital projects to address these 3 playgrounds? And we can start addressing those depending on, is it something we can do throughout the year? Is it something that we have to wait till next summer? I think at this point, it's really hard to do any other campuses where we're gonna have to do the work in the summer. But I think we can start looking at those schools that we can maybe look at throughout the school year. Whether this passes or not, I'm committed to funding significantly more than 250, and I hope our commission or our committee, when they get together, don't look and say, hey, it's 250,000, that's all we've got, because we've always talked about dreaming big. So let me jump over here to Mr. Lacer real quick.
How much money will we have left over roughly after all 3 of these are paid for in our budget?
Yeah, we won't know until we get Witten bid, because if you look at the first 2, the amount that we have left is close to the amount that the first 2 cost. So, some of that we won't know until they look at, because there'll be some architecture fees to do the actual build plan. We did the master plan. This is like the actual put this piece of equipment here, put this, the soil and everything like that. So, we'll know a little bit more when we get that kind of bid document back, and then that goes out. So I think we probably have enough in there to cover that Whitman playground, but, there may be
100,000 left over.
we won't know until we bid it, but I mean, we could be 10,000 over, and we have to come back, we have to add 10,000 to it at the next year's budget. We might be $20,000 under, and then we'd roll that into the next project, but we won't know that until we get the bid back.
Gotcha. Well, like I said, I believe all of us care about kids, and we want our kids to have playgrounds that they can play on. I know we discussed this a year ago, and I was concerned about, this being stalled. And not that we tried to stall it, but it's been a year and we still don't have playgrounds in the ground. We've allotted the money. We approved the PO or the budgets for it, or the bids for it, last week, a couple weeks ago. And it's been over a year. If we did allocate this $250,000, I hope that would speed up the process. If it sped up the process a couple months, is it worth it? You can never go wrong by trying to do the right thing. I don't think it's a bad thing that we're allocating $250,000 today. I appreciate District 8. I believe in dreaming big. I like dreaming big. But if we can do $250,000 tonight, I believe that's a good thing. I just think that would be a good thing for the families and the kids. Thank you.
Mr. Hollis?
He asked, that was the question I had, is if you allocate a minimum, does that speed anything up? Does it do anything for you other than just, hey?
No. I mean, we're working on getting the proposals together anyway, so it's really just when we bring it to you and y'all deciding how you want to allocate the money, because it's.
We have the company now that helps do it.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of doing a master plan, was to get somebody to come in and do this quicker for us.
Yeah, I think it just helps us identify the ones, and then we can, we can certainly just process down. I think we're really talking about once we get that next wave, because even getting the revenue over the last year, we allocated $250,000, but it was the fall before the commission allocated the $800,000. Then we decided to go through the master plan. Then we have to go through our bid rules and everything like that. So that's the process. I do think it'll go faster now because we've got that plan and we can roll off that. And then what we're talking about is getting, what we talked about earlier is getting the specific build documents done to get the bid done, and then also figuring out like which ones can we do while school's in session versus which ones need to be done during the summer.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a good point. I think, I'm not speaking for everyone, but talking with your constituents, whatever, I think everybody up here is committed to this. So there will 100% be funds allocated one way or the other, whether we do this or not. So,
well, and I think I would also celebrate the fact that these are the first 3 accessible playgrounds approved by the school board in the history of Sumner County Schools. So I think that's a big thing to hang each of your hats on, because that vote was unanimous.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
I think
What'd you say?
the playground vote was unanimous to
Yeah, I
support
think so.
the playground.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate Mr. King a year ago to get us kick-started into this. And by saying $250,000, let's just put something out there. We're a year down the road, and I think that we have demonstrated in good faith that we're all on board with this. Our actions, the committee, it takes time working with the state and our bids. It's a slow process, and it's hard to be patient with that. I do think that the marketing, the architectural, having that kind of master plan is going to really kick up the momentum in these projects. I find when I look at 2.5 million in this line that, no, I think maybe you're wanting to still prove that we care. We care. The ball is rolling. These playgrounds are going to happen. And with the grant money, there's work. I mean, we're looking at all our different avenues of revenue. That this may go really build momentum. I think it becomes burdensome and restrictive to put a dollar amount toward it. We're all in. We have buy-in in this. I'm going to be off this board. I still come to these meetings and advocate and watch, and I will be. I like looking at the 2.5 million and going, yeah, baby, that's the kind of money I'm talking about. Don't put me at 250. So I will be voting no on this, and yes to the package, to our budget with 2.5 million in that line item that we will work on getting these playgrounds built. So I think we've really built up a lot of momentum, and we've demonstrated in good faith that this is the track we're on. This is what we're gonna do. So.
Mr. Lancaster?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just don't, Mr. King talked about my discussion of having a minimum of one. I really just didn't want to limit us to a dollar figure on a playground. So this amendment is a minimum of 250. You said you wanted 250. He seconded it. He's doing this minimum. I'm good. Hell, there's all kind of good things to fight about in the world, but the word minimum in front of a number ain't it. And I am damn happy that we're at least fighting over money spent on this issue. So
Mr. Lacy?
I'll take that as a win any day.
My question is, would Board Member King consider changing his motion to allocate the 2.5 million to playgrounds? And let's do it tonight.
Yeah, baby.
Show me the money.
All right, so, again, we're gonna vote, we're gonna vote.
Check that over them after the meeting.
We're voting on the amendment to the amendment, which is minimum. Again, I mentioned a couple minutes ago, I think as a board, we've shown that we are prioritizing the playgrounds. We've got 3 in the pipeline right now. I'll continue to work to see that we get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever that number is that we need when we come back with a plan. Whether this money is allocated, the 250, the minimum of 250 or not, I'll vote to allocate additional funds. I hope our committee looks at this and says, not as, hey, we've only got 250, but, we've got whatever we think we need to recommend to the school board to make sure that every kid has a playground that allows them to participate, that's inclusive, that allows them to engage with their classmates. So, again, if the 250, makes some people feel good about us moving forward, about showing that we still got skin in the game, then, I'll vote for it. Not because that's where I want to stop, because that's where at least from the standpoint of saying, hey, we're committed, we're moving forward. But I can promise you that it's going to be more than 250 when we get down the road. 250 out of 2.5 is just such a small percentage anyway, and our kids deserve a lot more than that. I think when the numbers come back, hopefully we'll be able to budget and allocate even more resources to it. So I'll vote for it. Again, because it's a commitment we're making, and then as a board, I think we've shown we're willing to commit even more dollars to it down the road. So with that, if we can do a voice vote on this, just to make sure that we've got everybody accounted for.
Can you clarify what
We're voting right now on a minimum of, we're adding minimum to the request for 250,000. So
will that slow us down in the process?
no, it's not going to slow. It's not going to slow down. It's not going to speed up. It is what it is. Yeah. So it's still going to be the same process. We're just going to make sure that 250,000 is set aside, and then if we get a bid that comes back for 350,000, then we'll come back and we'll add another 100,000 to it, or we'll just pull that 250 from whatever that line item is. So right now we're voting on the amendment to the amendment, which is adding the word minimum. That's what we're voting on right now. So
I just got a quick question. In addition to the funding, when do we start doing grants? Have we already started that? process?
We have, I'm gonna get an answer for that from Ms. Norfleet. So we had to have the committee that started meeting, even prior, you know, like we started that, gosh, before we started the playground committee. That required a lot of like community health, stuff like that. So we got that committee going. Then we had to have the master plan that we did last year. So I'll get an update on the grant process.
Okay, so in between rolling for the budget, we do grants, we do capital projects. So it could be a snowball effect where we are doing 4 or 5, depending on when the money starts falling.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. And again, look, if all we commit is $250,000 during the next year, then we failed as a board. I want to be clear on that. So if we're going to commit $250 right now, I'm fine with that. But my commitment is significantly more than that to allocate towards playgrounds based on minimum. So voice vote by adding the word minimum. So, Mr. Johnson. Aye. So yes is in favor of adding the word minimum, and then we'll be on the amendment. So.
Okay,
Mr.
so we're doing
Johnson.
roll call. All right, Ms. Hayes. Ms. Tucker.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Mr. Evans.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Hollis.
Yes.
Ms. Brennick.
Yes.
Ms. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Daniels.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. And I'm going to go ahead, if all right, and go ahead and vote on the amendment. Just based on this last vote, we've had a lot of discussion already. So now we're voting on the amendment to the budget to allocate a minimum of $250,000. Now that we've added the word minimum to Mr. King's. So yeah, we've got to go to that amendment. So same thing again, now that we've got minimum added in there. So another voice vote, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. Ms. Hayes.
No.
Ms. Tucker.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Mr. Evans.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Hollis.
Yes.
Ms. Brennick.
Yes.
Ms. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Daniels.
Yes. All right,
Motion carries.
now we are back on the main motion, which is the discussion or action regarding the general purpose budget for 26-27. Any other comments, or are we ready to vote?
I would just like to say, and I said it last week, right now currently we're the second highest paying starting pay for teachers out of all the counties around us. We're probably going to lose some ground if some other counties increase their pay. So next budget season, you know, we need to start looking at keeping our teachers where they should be and our classified staff.
Thank you. And I would add to that, as we had speakers say earlier, that's where we need to continue to communicate with our legislatures. And I think even as we get into capital projects and get that list together, that gives us the opportunity with some of the money from the lottery that's been set aside for facilities to be able to go and work with them to see, you know, I know Dr. Langford said nobody knows what the rules are, so you know what, let's write our own rules and work with our legislatures to get as much money and funding as we can for capital projects we need in our community. So thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, this is a vote on the budget. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion or action regarding the federal budget for 26-27.
Motion to group and approve
Motion to
2 through
approve.
7.
I'm sorry, hold up just a second. What was that?
Motion to group and approve 3 through 7.
I got a motion to group and approve 3 through 7. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
There's one thing I want to note for everybody before you vote.
Okay.
One thing I want to note about, there is a typo in the nutrition budget. Ms. Brennick asked a question about the 45 cents last week for reduced. We double checked it, federal reimbursement requirements leave it at 40. So what you are approving with the nutrition budget is the reimbursement rate for reduced lunch will stay at 40 cents, not 45, and we'll update the document in board docs when we get the document. So then just wanted to note to everybody that's what you're voting on.
And thank you to Ms. Brennick for making that catch, or catching up.
And
So-
just to clarify with that too, that is that the same for breakfast as well for reduced, that it's not 40 cents, but it's whatever it was last year.
Yes,
There's a maximum you can charge for free and reduced lunch. That'd be 40 cents for lunch and whatever the comparable is
Yeah,
for
and
breakfast.
we'll update that document to reflect those rates, but it will be the 40 cents for the lunch is the maximum, and then whatever breakfast is and all that. We just wanted to note that for everybody.
All right. Quick vote on merging everything together. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we've grouped them together. Any comments on the remaining budget. One thing I would ask, since we're talking about nutrition, and I've mentioned this a couple times, I've got a real frustration with our legislative team allocating money towards vouchers while we're having to increase the cost of lunches for our students. I would like Dr. Langford to request that you, along with the rest of us as board members, speak with our legislatures about the cost of food, potential increase in the cost of food, depending on inflation, the economy, and looking at allocating dollars in the next budget year to possibly providing lunches to our students again, like we did during the COVID years. Because it's frustrating that we're giving basically a $7,500 rebate to students that are in private schools. And not taking care of the students that are in public schools. So I would just request that you continue to have that conversation with our legislatures.
Yeah, and then just to clarify too, that would also be a lot of federal also, because
Yes.
most of the money for school nutrition comes from federal
Yeah,
government.
but I believe there have been votes on
Right.
declining those dollars. So yes, anyway, any other comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor of budget line item 3 through 7, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries, and congratulations. We have passed our budget for the calendar year 26-27. Please note, we have no study session in June. We do have a voting session. I don't even know the date. We will look at our calendar for next year in June as well. So we'll get that sent out in advance so everybody can look at that if you've got any suggestions or changes. And then again, that's when Dr. Langford is committed to have a list of capital projects, so we can start working on that along with the list of our potential architects, so we can start moving forward on the big plans we have. So thank you guys for your discussion. Thank you for the feedback that you all provided prior to the meeting, the questions. That really helped, I think, as well, getting some of those questions answered prior to the meeting. So thank you for your input and your support. So with that, we are adjourned.